Can the iPhone 13 Pro keep up with a $3,000 camera setup like the one you're looking at right now? What's up guys, it's your boy Jerome, back at it with another video. Today we're going to be pushing the iPhone 13 Pro to its absolute limits in terms of its video capabilities and see if this $1,000 camera that fits in your pocket can keep up with a $3,000 setup like the one you're looking at right now. There are a couple things that I learned from doing the iPhone 11 Pro comparison video. If you haven't seen that one yet, make sure to check it out on the channel. We'll be making sure to implement some changes to make sure we're getting the best possible comparison between these two devices. For example, last time I didn't realize that cinematic mode was capped at 1080p, so it wasn't really a fair comparison between the iPhone 13 Pro's cinematic mode in 1080 versus the iPhone 11 Pro's just regular video shot in 4K. So for this time, we're going to make sure that anytime I'm using cinematic mode, that the Sony is also set to 1080p to make sure we're getting the best possible comparison. Another thing that I learned in the last comparison was that the iPhone 13 Pro in cinematic mode automatically films in HLG. If you don't know what that means, just go ahead and skip this part and smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. But for those of you nerds that really care about what HLG is, here's the quick version. In recent years, you've probably heard of HDR, or High Dynamic Range. HDR is usually explained as giving you more vibrant colors and deeper blacks and whiter whites. Well, HLG, or Hybrid Log Gamma, is just a version of HDR. But the cool thing that HLG does is it still retains all of the standard dynamic range information and compresses all of that into a single file. So that one file retains all of the high dynamic range and the standard dynamic range, hence the reason it's called a hybrid. Now that we're done with that long-winded explanation, all that to say that the iPhone 13 Pro automatically films in HLG when in cinematic mode, so to make sure we're matching that, we'll be putting the Sony in HLG as well. I don't normally use HLG because it's a lot of work in editing. So without further ado, let's go to the comparisons. So this is the controlled shot, what both of these would look like in just a regular old setting, both in 4K, no cinematic mode, no HLG, nothing, just straight out of the camera. And I think in this controlled environment, the Sony is definitely going to be better. It's got a lot better colors just looking at it on the screen here than the iPhone, and I think a lot of that just has to do with how much light there is in the room. If I had like a big softbox that I could use, then maybe the iPhone would perform a little bit better. But for right now, this is what it looks like. And just for comparison's sake, this is the same controlled shot, but with the rear cameras on the iPhone. But yeah, tell me what you guys think. We are outside. We've got regular video here, no cinematic. It is very bright out here. Just looking at these two videos side by side, the iPhone does a really good job of preserving the colors. You can see on the Sony that things are super blown out in the background. Now, with the Sony, you can adjust your settings to make things look a little bit better. And now we're pretty close to what the iPhone looks like in terms of the colors. But the biggest difference between the Sony and the iPhone here is that the Sony is super customizable, so if I don't like the way that this looks on my Sony, I can always add a filter. So now we've got the filter on, and I gotta say, both these shots look pretty similar, but with the Sony, you can preserve that bokeh, the blurriness in the background that you're looking for. I'm really impressed with the way that the iPhone actually looks. It seems to be preserving colors a little bit better. You can see in the sky, it looks really good. And here's the interesting thing, when you go out into direct sunlight, probably the most difficult way to shoot is in direct sunlight like this. The iPhone does a really good job of preserving those colors. Even with the filter as dark as it can possibly go, I think the iPhone shot actually still looks a little bit better. And the last thing we want to do is check and see how good cinematic mode looks. And since cinematic mode automatically films in HLG and in 1080p, we've matched those settings here on the Sony. And again, we'll have to wait and see what this ends up looking like in the computer, because HLG does a lot better job at preserving colors. So maybe the Sony will end up, you know, performing a little bit better like I want it to. But again, same thing. Looking at the iPhone just right here, right now, looks a little bit better. What about if we step out into the sun? Similar kind of as the last time with the non-cinematic. A lot of really good colors coming from the iPhone, especially in the sky. Off to an early lead for the iPhone. Now we are downstairs in the basement in a low light situation, and I gotta say, while the iPhone picture may look better, I think the Sony is more accurate in terms of colors and actually what I'm seeing. The iPhone is just overly adding a ton of exposure to just brighten up the scene a little bit. The iPhone's biggest issue has always been low light situations, so I'm now down in the basement in front of a single small window to see what the comparison shot looks like. And I think you can immediately tell the iPhone looks a little bit grainier. It's just because the sensors are so much smaller, the camera itself is so much smaller. So that's just gonna happen in low light, but honestly, it doesn't look terrible. And if we switch it to cinematic mode, honestly, even a little bit better. The fact that the cinematic mode is blurring out the background a little bit takes a little away from how grainy the video was before. So focusing on your subject like that, I think really does help the iPhone here. So still pretty impressed. I think in terms of the low light situation, I gotta give this one to the Sony, but I'm still pretty impressed with the way that the iPhone's performing. The iPhone 13 Pro is definitely a massive improvement to previous generations of iPhone, but it still doesn't quite reach the level of a dedicated camera setup like the Sony a7C. The Sony is just so much more customizable with what you can do. You can change the resolution on it. You can change the ISO and how much light you're letting into that sensor. You can even add filters to make your shot look exactly like you want it to. The iPhone is basically using software and AI to predict what you want your shot to look like. So in some cases that works really well, but you're not always going to get your shot to look exactly how you want it to. But I will say the iPhone was super impressive in outdoors, and I would even argue that in harsh sunlight, it performed even better than the Sony a7C did. And that's why in terms of vlogging, I think the iPhone 13 Pro is a complete game changer. The colors look fantastic and you still get a really clean image, especially with a lot of light. And I don't know if you guys could tell in the comparison shots, but the Sony is just so heavy that when I hold it for an extended period of time, my hand just starts shaking. I think at this point, probably the only thing holding it back would be a dedicated microphone. All of the sound that you've heard in this video has come directly from my Rode NTG microphone right here. But a lot of companies, including Rode, do sell dedicated iPhone microphones. So that might be a really easy solution for any type of vlogger that wants to use their phone as their main camera. But that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below between these two cameras. If you like this video, please make sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel. I'm Jerome with All Things Tech and Finance. I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.